Hello everybody, this is Amber Rogers, your instructor for Composition 2, and I promised you, because I canceled class today, that I'd make you a brief video to explain how to do the says does list and just kind of mimic what we would have done in class today. So I am screen capturing my laptop, and I am going to go over just a few things with you. I will also be sure to I'm going to try to upload this to YouTube and have the closed captioning on because I know I talk fast for my ESL students. So we're going to try to do this way instead. So I want to kind of go over what we would have done in class. Just as a reminder, before 11:30 today, you were supposed to have signed up. Under Module 1, there was a Make Your Article choice. Actually, let me go into modules to show you that I listed the 5 articles you could have chosen. And remember that this article is an online editorial that you'll be working with throughout the rest of the semester because the editorial is what you'll be analyzing for your rhetorical analysis assignment, which is not due until week 7. But again, we're going to be working with this editorial for several weeks. So I'd say about a quarter or half of you have already picked a article, and how you do that is simply going into, it's still part of week 1 homework, again due at 11:30 today, make your article choice, and it's like a little survey thing, and it has you fill out your first and second choice. Once you've filled that out, today I will be adding you to a group where, and I will go how you look at your group. If you click on the People tab right here, your interface will look a little different than mine, but if you go to Rhetorical Analysis Groups, you're going to see this long list because I have 3 classes in Comp 2, but you will only see, there will be a little red link that says click here to enter group, and you'll be able to only enter one group page. But once you sign up for your first choice, and I think everyone will get their first choice, I move your name over into, and these are our groups for Thursday, into the article you want. The reason I have groups, you don't have to necessarily engage in the groups. I just have them so if you want to work together on some of these smaller assignments leading up to the rhetorical analysis, you can. Just as an example, I will go into one of the group pages if you're not familiar with using groups on Canvas, but it's sort of like a mini Canvas class. You have these new tabs now within your group where you can discuss, you can add files. If your group wants to work on a Google Doc over creating a says does assignment and working on it together, that's fine. However, if you're more introverted and you don't want to work in a group, certainly you can just do everything on your own. It's not a big deal. If we were in class today, I would have had you meet each other face to face in the groups, but we'll do that next week. So just make sure that you finish your week 1 module 1 homework before 11:30 today, so I know which group or which article you want to work with. Once you pick your article, and I had you in groups, what I would have done is shown you actually, let me go back here to our class, the assignment that all this next 6 weeks of work will lead up to. This is nothing you need to really worry about right now. It's not as if you need to start writing this assignment right now. I just wanted to give you an idea of where we're headed in the next 6 weeks. Let me actually click into modules to find out what I'm looking for. So if you really scroll down into some of the later weeks, I just want to show you the general idea of what the rhetorical analysis is about, what we're leading up to. And this is the basic expectations sheet. Maybe I'll just click preview. So basically, what you'll be doing ultimately is, after reading your editorial and analyzing your editorial from those options, you will be deciding whether or not that editorial worked in terms of its rhetoric. So I really don't care about, well, I care, but I don't necessarily need to know your opinion over the content of the editorial. The rhetorical analysis is all about, we're learning rhetorical theory. We're going to learn about the rhetorical triangle and basically logos, pathos, and ethos. And we're going to analyze your editorial based on whether you think the author was successful in terms of their rhetoric, how well that they argued for the topic. So in the end, your thesis statement will end up deciding whether you think that this article was rhetorically effective or not. So that's really important to keep in mind. We're going to do more content-based things in the second half of class. So this is all, okay, let's learn the rhetorical theory, and then can we apply the theory to critique something else? So that's where we're headed. We're not doing this yet, but I just want to kind of put it on the horizon for you, that that's ultimately every assignment that we're going to have, pardon me while I drink my coffee, will lead up to that. So today what I would have done with you is opened up this Google slide deck, and I can post this to the chat feature on our Canvas page. But in groups, I would have asked you, made sure that you read the article that you picked, and then asked simply, let's go down here, a little bit about the rhetorical context. So these are some things I want you to at least think about in terms of the article that you picked on your own. You don't have to fill anything out or do an assignment over it, but there's something that you should really consider. You should ask yourself first, who is the author? What motivates the author to write, and what's the author's purpose? I know for several of you, especially if you picked a New York Times article, most of the editorials are written by the editorial board. Remember that in editorial, you're allowed to write your own opinion, but in the New York Times, it does say that with the editorial board, it's not representing the entire newspaper's opinion. It's just some of the people's opinion on the editorial board. It's usually made up of several different people. You don't need to know a specific author if it's written by the editorial board. You can just say that the editorial board wrote it. But some of the articles do have specific authors, so you want to make sure you know who that is. And then you're guessing here what you think that motivated the author or authors to write this specific article. Maybe it was a timely thing, that's something that's happening right now, like with the Oscar nominations. Or perhaps, there's a political movement that they want to shed light on. So you want to think about what the author's purpose is. Again, you don't have to fill anything out or answer these like writing down answers, but they should be answers, because they're questions that you answer in your own mind. Also, you should be thinking about their target audience, the demographic data of their audience, and the political ideology. When I say intersectional positioning right here, what I mean is like, who do you imagine the race, class, gender, ethnicity, gender expression of the audience to be, and where do those those categories intersect? So you really want to be thinking about who they try to gauge the article for, because obviously they do have a target audience in mind. That's another thing you want to think about. And finally, we want to consider genre. So, or let me back up here. Obviously, when you write any kind of argument, there's usually a specific genre you're working in. For example, if you wrote a tweet that was an argument, we know that tweets are short. We know often they have hashtags attached to them, or maybe even a linked handle for another person. And a tweet has certain, but in general, a tweet has certain rules it follows in terms of its rhetorical context. Same goes for an online editorial. Let me just blow this up so you can see it better. Sorry about that. This is from an old textbook that I had, but it does a really good job of showing, okay, how well does your article that you picked fit into the general expectation of what an online editorial or a newspaper editorial should look like. Usually editorials are fairly short, around 500 to 1,000 words, although some of your articles that I picked are longer. Typically, they have very short paragraphs. Sometimes the paragraphs are only one sentence long. They usually have a short journalistic style, short paragraphs, not a lot of evidence, but the evidence that they do have, it's not usually documented using anything like MLA, but typically you can find, at least on online editorials, hyperlinks. So you click on the hyperlink, the underlying text, and it takes you to a different article or a place where they got their information. So what I really want you to do is think about, well, how well does my article fit in with these rules? Does it break its genre at all? Does it bend the rules here? Or does it really follow these rules pretty tightly? So these are just some concepts I want you to think about in terms of your article before we get into the says-does list. Okay, so now what I want to show you is the says-does list assignment and it's your first real assignment of class. And I want to kind of just walk through an example that I've written to really explain like how it works. So the says does list is essentially a list breaking down your editorial. So for each paragraph in your editorial, you're going to number the paragraphs, and then you're going to write a one-sentence summary of each paragraph for the says list part 1. So what do I mean by that? I've got my own sample editorial here that I pulled from the New York Times a few years ago. And what the says list asks you to do is basically for each paragraph, write a one-sentence summary. Remember the difference between paraphrasing and summarizing. Usually with summarizing, we are taking, let's see, this first paragraph in my editorial is 2 sentences long. I'm paring down the information, writing it in my own words, and making it only 1 sentence. So I'm kind of, paring it down, funneling it down to 1 sentence. Another good example, some of these paragraphs are like 3 sentences long, and I'd make it 1 sentence. So writing 1 sentence summary in your own words about what you've read. Paraphrasing is a little different because it's usually 1 for 1. So if there were like 2 or 3 sentences, you're still putting it in your own words, but it's more of an equal kind of measure. But we're not paraphrasing, we're summarizing each paragraph. So if I scroll down this document, and I will post this to Canvas, you notice my first paragraph here, Kevin Stankiewicz wrote an article about rating of professors helps college students make good decisions. In the first paragraph, he writes, before making a notable purchase or investment, consumers often consult reviews from others. Whether buying a new car or home appliance, people want to make informed decisions. So I looked at that, and then I decided to come up with my own. So this is my says does list. And my says statement, let's see if I can highlight it, is this. And it's basically a 1-sentence summary of what I just read. I said, before buying a product, most consumers want to make informed decisions about what they purchase. Basically saying the same thing, but in my own words, and I kind of pared down the information. Let's look at paragraph 2 for the says statements. He says in his own paragraph 2 in his article, when college students sign up for classes taught by specific professors, we are consumers too. We pay tuition for classes that help us gain education and ultimately a diploma. We need to be able to make informed decisions about the classes we pay for. So if I go down to my says list, I decided to say college students pay for classes, and in this way are consumers who deserve to know what they're buying. I'm, again, summarizing what he said, making it 1 sentence long in my own words. So you would do this for every single paragraph in your article. So that's the says part. And again, this assignment sheet that's listed for Module 2 really does explain this in the same way, but just in text form. So again, 1-sentence summaries of each paragraph, and number the paragraphs if you can. And then the second part is really kind of going beyond summarizing, I'm just asking you to really think about, okay, what purpose does each paragraph serve? It's okay if you don't get it entirely right. I'm just asking you to attempt it, but this does a really good job, this assignment, of explaining what I mean. But essentially, you're looking at each paragraph to see, okay, what's the purpose of the paragraph? You know, if you think of a classic essay, you know that there's like an introduction, there are body paragraphs that help explain your point, and then there's a conclusion. It kind of works like that. So you notice this first paragraph, I would go down now to my does list, and you can write all your says statements first and then your does statements, or you can do one and the other, however you want to organize it. But I said that this first paragraph introduces the topic. It just does. And I kind of put it in parentheses what the topic was. And if you look up to the second paragraph again, where the author kind of, correlates buying products online with shopping for professors, I said that paragraph makes a comparison between consumerism and higher learning. You see, I'm not saying what the paragraph says, because that's the says statement. What I'm trying to guess at is what it does. So usually these does statements include like active verbs, start with active verbs. You see, provides an example, makes a comparison, makes a distinction, provides us an example, provides a statistic. Further reiterates. So I'm really and you're just giving it a shot of how the paragraphs work. Like, what are they trying to do? Again, we're not going to use the does statements in the second part of the homework for the editorial summary, but we are going to use the says statements. But the does is just really kind of starting to get you to think critically about the article that you have. So that's a says does list assignment. Your second assignment that is due for next week is the editorial summary, which is going to be really easy in comparison. And I'll explain what I mean here in a second. Let me just open up my example. Hold on just a second. Oh, right there. Okay. Just want to make sure that's the right one. Okay. So let's go look at the assignment sheet. For the editorial summary, what you're basically doing is writing a summary of the article that you've read, because ultimately this summary will go into the rhetorical analysis final paper. Just like any good movie review, usually the author summarizes the movie without giving spoilers away before critiquing the movie. And this is exactly what the editorial summary helps you do. So we're going to write the summary over your article now. This is, one, to brush up on your summary skills, make sure you know what you're doing, and two, this helps us set up the document later on for rhetorical analysis in terms of MLA formatting, so you don't have to do it later. So I again will post my example online today, but essentially you don't have to write anything. You just wrote all those says statements, and what you're going to do is put all those says statements together in a paragraph form and then add a few other things. So the says statements literally make up the content of your editorial summary, because if you put them all together, that's a summary of your article. But you still have to do a few other things. So I recommend copying all your says statements and putting them in paragraph form, making sure they're double spaced. And then you'll add the MLA header and a few other things to make the editorial summary work. And this is, again, all listed in the assignment sheet. But I'm going to show you my example of what I mean. You're going to add an MLA header, and you notice from my example, it's first your name, my name, the instructor's name, the class you're in, and then the date, with the day coming first, the month, and then the year. You have one space down, and then you have your title, which is centered. I just put editorial summary as my title. And then you have one space down, and then you begin your body paragraph. I want all the says statements in chronological order to be one paragraph long. It's going to be a long paragraph. Some people will go on to the next page with their paragraph. That's okay, but the summary should be ultimately one paragraph long. It's okay if it's long. So these are all my says statements in order, except for I've added a few other things, and the assignment sheet tells you exactly what you need to add. The first thing you need to add after doing your MLA formatting is an opening sentence. You can't assume in your rhetorical analysis or in the editorial summary assignment that your readers have read your article. So what it's going to ask you to do is write an opening sentence that includes all the identifying information to know what article you're even talking about. So you notice in my example, I made sure to list the publication, the New York Times, and in MLA, titles of major publications are in italics. So make sure that it's in italics. And then the title of the article, in MLA, things that aren't like big newspapers or books or albums, if it's like an article or a chapter or a song, those titles are in quotation marks. So that's my article title in quotation marks. And then I have the author. I have a specific name here, but if you had the editorial board, you could just say editorial board, and you don't have to capitalize it. And then this first sentence, along with all the identifying information, gives a one-sentence summary of the entire article. So if you had to summarize your whole article into one sentence, what would you say? What's the main idea? What are they arguing for? And I have listed that here. Just a second. My daughter's got me pause. Okay, so sorry for pausing. Essentially, in addition to adding this first sentence that you'll write for the editorial summary, you need to also make sure that you provide attributive tags every once in a while to remind the reader that while you did put this in your own words, these are not your ideas. They're the ideas of the author of the article that you picked. So I've put them in bold. I just ask you every once in a while to remind the reader who wrote this. So you see like Stanikowitz argues, Stanikowitz goes on to explain, he begins. So this kind of just reminds the reader that, again, in front of some of the said statements, not in front of all of them, that Stanikowitz wrote this. The last couple things I want you to do with the editorial summary is I want to see if you can pick a quote from your article and include it in the editorial summary. And again, the assignment asks you and knows how to do this. But essentially, I want to see if you can set up a quote in MLA formatting. So you notice here I picked full-time tuition and fees for in-state residents. It's estimated at $10,000. So I have an attributive tag still, because always before a quote we need to have an attributive tag, something that introduces or sets up the quote. We don't want just the quote by itself. And I have the quote, and you notice I don't have anything like a parenthetical citation. And the reason for this is, one, this article was online, so there are no page numbers. Typically in MLA, you'll see an author's last name and then the page number. I could have the author's last name still in parentheses, but I've already used the author right up here in the attributive tag, so there's no reason to include a parenthetical citation with the author's last name after the quote. Yours will probably look similar. Finally, the thing that you need to include is a works cited page, and this just helps set up, you write the citation now, you don't have to worry about it later when you need to include it for the rhetorical analysis because you've already written it. There's no outside research you're doing for this assignment or the rhetorical analysis, so the only citation that should be on the page for your works cited is your editorial, and it's a citation in MLA formatting. I've written mine out here as an example, but if you use a website like EasyBib or anything like that, that's fine. You might just double check its accuracy on a good place to go is Purdue. Let's see if I can Purdue OWL. It's a good website, and it kind of helps lay out the rules of MLA. It won't do it for you, but it tells you how to do it. So this is my citation. You notice that it's double spaced. Works cited is the title in the middle, and it's on its own page. And then this is called a hanging indent. In Microsoft Word, you go to Format Paragraph, and you make sure if I were to highlight this, I could go into hanging. So it's kind of the opposite of the indentation you do for the paragraphs, where it's half an inch and word every time you start a new paragraph. Here, it's half an inch, and then the rest kind of falls under the first line. So I want you to attempt to do this, and you do get points for doing it right. If you have questions about how to set this up in a Google Doc, in Apple Pages, or in Microsoft Word, just send me an email or ask me, and I'm happy to explain. I also plan to be in work as long as the weather holds on Friday, hopefully most of Friday morning. So if you want to stop in and I can explain it face to face, we can do that too. So that's the second assignment that you have, and again, it's all kind of listed here. But if you have questions or concerns, certainly you can let me know. And then the other piece of the homework is simply to read chapter 4, Everything's an Argument. If you have questions, again, just let me know, ask, and thank you for being so patient watching this video. I really do appreciate it. Make sure you finish week 1 homework before 11:30 today, and then before we meet next Thursday, you need to complete week 2, module 2's homework. Thank you so much. Be safe out there today, and I will see you later.